Welcome back to Motherhood Uncut. We are so glad you're here. In this podcast, Deb Rubin and I talk about all things motherhood related, the things that people don't usually want to bring to the table, the messy, the hilarious, the ugly, the challenging, the amazing, the beautiful, the really effed up, all that stuff. We've got it here for you. We bring to you our own personal experience as moms, as well as some research and data that might help you along the way. Thanks for being here. Bring your friends. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. We've got you. Come mother with us.
Hey everyone, this is Deb, and we are so excited to share this last interview with you. We brought on two of our dear friends, Amy Keller and Abby Church, to talk about the transitioning into empty nesting, and we play with that word a little bit. It's a really wonderful conversation. Kate and I both learned so much from these amazing women, and we hope you enjoy it too. Thanks for listening.
Hey, listeners. As always, our sponsor for the Motherhood Uncut podcast is the One Clock, ONECLOCK.co. Wake up better. Beautiful piece of art. Amazing way to start your day. This clock is all developed based on sleep and wake science. So check it out. ONECLOCK.co. Wake up better. Hey all, it's Kate. I want to make sure you know about my new book, Reinventing Supermom: Support, Encouragement, and Strategies for New Mothers Who Feel Lost. This book just launched. It is an amazing book for any of you out there who are mothers somewhere between pregnancy and that first year postpartum. It is a book that is going to guide you through lots of things to think about in prevention of postpartum mood disorders like depression and anxiety, but a lot of the stuff that Deb and I talk about here on this podcast that we know really contributes to maternal well-being is here in this book. You may know someone who's a new mom that could use this book, so give it a go. Check it out, read it, dog ear it, take it in the bath, make it yours. You can get it on Amazon or Boulder Bookstore and Boulder Barnes and Noble. Thanks for checking it out.
Hi, Deb.
Hi, Kate.
It's podcast day.
Happy podcast day. We have really, really amazing friends with us today, Abby Church and Amy Keller. They're longtime friends of ours, and they're also moms that we've been looking up to for the last many years because they are many years ahead of us. Well, not many years. A handful of years ahead of us.
Long enough ahead of us that the first time, Abby, that I really spent a chunk of time with you was that Easter weekend in Snowmass when Bridger was a baby and Kinley was a toddler, and you brought your girls up who were like basically babies themselves.
Very little.
Do you remember that?
Yes, I remember that.
For Easter.
I remember that.
But I remember your girls must have been, how old were they, like 5 and 7 or something like that?
Yeah.
And I remember thinking that they were so old.
I know.
I'm sorry, that's my phone. That's okay. Phones are good. Let's turn off your phone.
It's off. It's just ringing.
Okay.
It's on vibrate.
We like that. See, we're messy here. We just. Do you remember that? And I felt like your kids were so much older than mine, and I looked up to you as like the all-time guru mama, and I still do.
They had these little girls. They were young.
Will you tell everybody how old they are now?
So now I have a 21-year-old and an 18-year-old.
And Amy, you're our boy mama here tonight.
I'm the boy mama. Yes. Yes.
How old are you boys?
They are 18 and 20. Yeah. Maybe that's another podcast, boys.
It is 100% another podcast. We have no boy mama representation.
What would we do today?
Yes, thank goodness.
In the house.
So we brought these fabulous women on today because we want to have a conversation about what it's like to be empty nesting, what it's like to be in the stage of parenting you're in. And we're also really curious about like the transitional process of getting here. So do you have any questions that are on your mind right away?
Well, I do. And before I ask the question, I think what we want to honor to our listeners is that so many of our episodes have been about younger kids, right? We've talked about babies, we talked about toddler, school age, and of course, teenager. And this is this opportunity, both Amy and Abby, you know that Deb and I are hanging on every word every time we're all together about what it's like to parent these young adults going off to college. So it's of course a chance for us, Deb, me and you, to like listen and learn and ask our questions. It's also a chance for our listeners to hear this perspective from moms with older children. Really, we could say young adults, right? And that to me is one of the gifts of having you guys here, because we really want this podcast to be representative of all ages.
Yes.
And seasoned mothers and all.
Seasoned is right. I want to say one other thing before. Beautiful seasons. Yeah. So one of the things that we talk about a lot are the different stages of parenting and the different stages our kids go through. And the thing that I'm fascinated with right now is that around adolescence and what a long period it is. And I think it's actually really important that we recognize that adolescence is not actually a stage. It's a bridge between childhood and adulthood. And it's, you know, I think what adolescence actually translates to is moving towards maturity. And it's, and because your kids are still adolescents, but they're on the other end of almost being in adulthood, you've been on this journey of really holding their hand to get to this place where they're doing it on their own. They're not with you anymore. Yeah. So I wonder if that's a good place to start of what is that like to know that you're not there holding their hand every step of the way right now.
Yeah. I mean, wow, there's a lot to be said about all of that. I would say, so it's really hard to have your kids leave the house and you're wondering, have I prepared them to leave? I mean, that's definitely like that year leading up for both kids. I was like, oh my gosh, are they ready? Have I done my job to get them to this point? And I have two different girls who have lived in the world in two totally different ways and have had very different experiences. So no, they're not necessarily like ready, and they go and it's all good and you're at home and
as if there's like, you know, the ready moment when they're
no
like
ready, right?
It's a constant growth.
It's a constant
and evolvement.
Yes,
right?
It is.
It's almost like they have to step out and experience the world and make mistakes before they become ready.
Yeah.
They make those mistakes and then they start to pull out the things that are in their basket of knowledge from what we've hopefully taught them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then they start to get legs.
Yeah.
And they start to figure it out.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting process. And I think different for different kids, for sure.
Yeah.
And sometimes different for boys than it is for girls at different speeds.
I'm curious if you feel like you were ready, right? So here we are talking about are our kids ready when it's time to go, right? Like I remember talking to you, Abby, at one point, and I think we've all had these conversations where you were really feeling the feels of becoming an empty nester. And then of course there was like, well, the alternative is not so awesome.
Yeah.
Right? Like
you don't want them to stay.
It's good that they want to go.
Because
right?
they need to go. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Because they need to go, and in many ways they're ready.
Yeah.
But how did you feel? How ready or not ready were both of you?
I think I've always sort of been this way though. Like I wasn't really the mom in kindergarten who was crying because my kid left and they were like leaving the home base and they were like heading off into kindergarten. Always sort of been like, awesome, what's coming next? Like kind of excited for the next phase of things. And so I think because of that, all along the way, I was sort of like checking myself, like, are they ready? Am I ready? What's it going to be like when our house is just my husband and I? Kind of like getting excited. I got excited for that next phase. Like, way more time for me, to just do me. I mean, Amy and I were talking about this whole empty nest phrase.
Yeah.
We both don't like it.
Got a thing about it.
Tell us.
I was thinking about this. What is it? And I think empty nesting, it has this connotation. It's negative. It's sad. It's empty. There's a depressive element to it. And certainly not to discount those feelings that I'm sure like so many parents experience. I did not feel that way. I feel like you, Ab. I was excited. I was definitely, there was other, like just the transition coming. Like I knew that was coming for myself. I was like, okay, I gotta like get my head around this. And that's another topic. But in terms of being sad, like I didn't cry. I didn't cry. I felt, and I was like, why am I not crying? Is something wrong with me? Because I love those two boys more than life itself. It doesn't even need to be said. But I wasn't crying, and it made me wonder, like, what's that about? And I think after reflecting on that, I realized it was about they were ready. They were ready.
Yeah.
And so are you.
And I got myself ready.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think you said something once, Deb, that maybe your mom told you right? But you said this most beautiful thing that I've held on to so much, which is that, tell me if I'm not getting this right, but what I think I remember you saying is that when we go through those different stages with our kids, to preschool, to kindergarten, to grade school, to high school, to college, to summer camp, whatever it is, and we feel really ready for them to go, it's a sign that we've done our work in that previous stage. Did I say that the right way?
Yeah. Yes. The only thing I would add is it's a sign of having presence in each of those stages. And again, that doesn't mean you don't feel sad. Like, I mean, my little one didn't really speak to anyone until she was 5 years old, walking into kindergarten. I remember watching her walk off and holding Howie's hand and being like, there was definitely a tear, and she was my youngest. And then I walked out and was like, party, I got 2 kids in elementary school. But like, but yeah, it's a indicator of being present in those moments, which is really what we're trying to kind of cultivate for moms, of how to be present in the moments with self-care, with kind of acceptance of where you're at, all the things that allow for presence.
And non-attachment, right? So, I'm sort of obsessed with this. I'm circled back to this idea, which comes and goes in so many different disciplines and religions and philosophies, but this idea that attachment to something is what causes suffering, right? And the less quote unquote attached we are to something, and as it shifts and grows, the less we suffer when it moves. And there's this idea in mothering that I've been thinking so much about, is like, where am I unconsciously attached to my children in certain ways, right? And I think about you two and your kids going away to college, and all of our many friends who this has happened to, and the people listening, where like, I think it's probably an easier, or should I say less suffering kind of, that's not a word, but you just laughed at me. Like whatever, like it's less, there's less suffering if, when my kids are with me, I'm less attached to them having to be with me. Yes. Am I saying that the right way?
Yes.
Like, as I let my kids be fluid and grow, then whether they're going on to summer camp or a different grade or college, I'm more ready for that, because I'm not holding on to something as if it needs to stay that way forever.
Beautiful. Yes. I followed you, every word. Wait, it brings up a question though. And that is, in the moments when you really miss them, what do you do?
Today I'm really missing one of them. One is still home. She's heading off soon, but the other one has left, and I really miss her. So I would like to say, like, Deb, you said something to me once where, like, we can be full of contradiction. Like, we can be feeling 2 things at the same time. So you can be feeling like, I intensely miss them, And I can't wait for them to come home. And I can't wait for our family to all be together again for like a weekends or holidays or summers or whatever. I can't wait for that. And at the same time, I'm also absolutely thrilled to be doing whatever I want when I want. You work on a daily basis with your kids and like all that goes along with raising them so intimately and intensely, and then they leave in this wow. I mean, it's a huge shift from a daily experience. Even if when they're seniors in high school, they're hardly around. They're absolutely still around though. You're there in your head. You don't know when they're going to walk through the door.
Their dishes are around.
Their dishes are there. All their shoes.
Around.
Exactly. Their laundry's halfway falling out of the dryer. Like all that. So they're around, but, and then they're gone. Depending on what they do when they graduate high school, but then they're gone. And it's like, it's like a lifting of responsibility on this like intimate daily basis. They're always on your brain still, but not in the same way as when they're living with you. Yeah. And it is such a, I love it. I love that. That's why the nest thing for me, I think is tricky because it feels like we are these birds who have nests and that's who we are. And that's what we do is creating a nest. And I feel like that's what we've been doing, but I'm not just a nest. I'm not just a bird sitting in a nest. And so I feel like there's so much more to me and to my relationship with my husband, who I'm so happy to like be connecting with again and like being around. So that's been a major shift for me. And that's why the nest thing is just kind of a tricky concept. It just doesn't resonate.
It's like your whole worth is
nest.
the nest. And it's, that's not the truth. That's not the case.
Yeah.
But what was your question, Deb? You had asked,
what do you do when you miss them in those moments?
When you really miss them?
Yeah. Like how do you tend to yourself?
Yeah.
Well,
I try not to text them too much.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, when I do, I just give a little text and they just send a little text back. It's just like, yeah, I love you so much. You're amazing. Or just whatever. It's just a little something and they send a little something back and it's like, you just feel that connection. You're like, okay, they're good. They're good. But I'll tell you that the youngest was just home for a really long break. He's on the quarter system, so it was about 5 weeks, and he just left on Saturday, and it was great. It was great to have him home, but it was such a difference from having everything really quiet, and having my space clean and food in the fridge, and then he was home and it was back to regular programming, how it used to be. That's another thing with everyone's like, how are you feeling with the empty nest? I'm like, I don't even believe there's such thing as an empty nest. They come and they go. They come and they go. So yeah, and it was great. And then he left on Saturday and it was time. He was ready to go back. I knew he was in a good place. We were ready to let him go, ready to get back to regular, sleeping. And it was good.
You know what you're making me think of? Well, two things. One is I think that we could dive into either one of these topics if you guys want to, but there's two big points, right? One, you just made such an interesting comment about who are we outside of being mothers to our children? And I think some of us go through motherhood already engaging in that process of exploration, even when our kids are young. And some of us don't go through that process until our kids are no longer home, or maybe when they go to school for the first time, right? It's sort of this big question of like, if I'm not doing the mothering 24/7, who am I, right? And so that's an interesting question for me. I also have a question that one of you said something to that made me think of, and we don't have to go into both of these, but is sort of that, Deb and I have talked about this so much in this podcast, that the hardest part, certainly one of the hardest parts for me of mothering is not knowing that my job is not to prevent my kids from feeling pain. And when our kids feel pain and they're close to us, we can hug them. Right. And I have other questions for you we could go either direction is like, wow, what happens for you? What is it like for you when you talk to your kids and they're not home and they're in pain? And what is that like for you? And what's your process? So 2 big topics, both of them really interesting. We could go either direction.
I mean, well, I'll just start with that one because it's brutal. It's so hard when they are going through something difficult, whether they're sick. I mean, when they're far away and they're really sick and you're like counting on them in their very sick state to figure out how to adult and take care of themselves. This is very hard. And then when they're emotionally upset or struggling, it's really, really hard when if they're far away, I have to I think what I'll keep going back to in all those moments, is just, it's like a mantra in my head that they're learning how to do this when they're an adult. Like these are skills that are going to take them into the future. It's like a constant, it's okay because this is going to help them out. That's why I have to keep telling myself that over and over again.
It's purposeful.
It's purposeful. It's helpful. It's life. We keep, talking about that with our kids too. I'm like, this is what it is to be a human. And you have to work through this stuff, the good and the bad and the sick and all of it. But man, as a mom, I mean, it's not to say it doesn't mean I sleep well when they're not doing well. And what do I do with them? I think I'm connecting and are they doing the things they need to do? And I want them to step in and take care, make their doctor's appointments and handle it themselves because they are off at college. And I think that's what I try my best to let them handle it. It's hard.
Yeah.
I mean, 2 things. It almost feels like this is what high school years are for, is to guide them, to teach them, to model how to, call the doctor. And even though we're still doing it for them, I think it's when it's done really intentionally of I'll use this example of, oh, right now you need to email your guidance counselor. And then, to expect a 14-year-old to know how to do that is unrealistic. And so it might start with, I'm going to email them, you're going to watch me. Next step is I'm going to stand next to you while you type it yourself and I might dictate to the words to you. The next step is, here, you're going to go do it on by yourself. And then eventually they don't need us anymore, right? And so then this is a training game. And the biggest thing I heard you say is trust. You are having a lot of trust and a lot of patience right now. Did you want to speak to that?
Well, I did want to say that it's they move into their first semester or first quarter of school, and there's so much that I want to do. I want to have you touch base with your guidance or your counselor, and do you know what you're signing up for, and are you ready? And I just kept my mouth shut and I let him do it. I figured, you know what, the first quarter, first semester, maybe even the first year, you just let it be an opportunity for them to learn and just do it on their own. It was amazing. I mean, he has just picked it up and he's running with it. And I haven't had to do anything, but there were some bumps in the beginning and it felt good to just, watch myself pull back and let him pull forward.
And if there are balls that are dropped, then they deal with it. I mean, this is life too. I mean, we all drop the ball every once in a while and they're just learning how to do all this stuff. So you have to let them just do it.
It's funny. I'm watching myself as you guys are talking and I'm like, first of all, you're speaking about a type of parenting that I think Deb and I resonate with, right? Which is allow them to learn the hard way, which is through experience, versus doing it for them to prevent them from screwing up, right? And I think, Deb, you and I have been on that path of mothering since our kids were little in realistic ways based on their age. So it's the same thing you're saying. And even with that being the way I parent, my tummy hurts when I'm hearing you say this. And I can imagine that there might be some listeners who haven't necessarily chosen to parent that way, right? That they've sort of been more engaged or taken more of a lead in some of things. And I imagine that for them and for all of us, that idea of letting go of that control, of allowing your kids, our kids, to fail, to fuck up, to forget to sign up for that credit, to, you know, whatever the heck it is like so challenging, because we know that inherently with that mistake is going to come some pain.
Yeah.
And most of us, dare I say all of us as mothers, as parents, really don't like the idea of our kids feeling pain or experiencing pain.
You don't.
So I'm just so aware of this conflict. Like, we know it's good for them.
Right.
And I guess the follow-up question I have for you is, what helps you to do that? What is required of you? What do you notice yourself needing to do to be able to step back and let them make those kinds of mistakes?
I think I know that they've got it. I trust them. That's that word again. I know that they can do it.
Just out of curiosity, how do you know?
It's just a feeling. It's just a feeling.
Yeah.
I also think there's something to when we believe they can do it, they can do it. That doesn't mean they're going to do it right every time, or not even close, but it's like, that is us constantly lending them. I mean, the technical therapy term would be ego strength. We're like lending them ego strength. Yeah. That's a weird, old school word, but you get the idea. And I think we're doing that all the time, like believing in them.
And they're looking at us like, do you think I've got it?
Yeah.
That's that energetic piece that, Deb, we talk about this so often, is like, it's not just the words we use with our kids. It's not just, I believe you can do this, and inside I'm like, he fucking can't do this, or she's gonna, right? It's like the work. That's where my question came from. The work comes from actually really being able to fall back on that deep trust and knowing. You may not know what being okay or being able to do it looks like.
Yeah.
But you just know that there's that capacity to be able to get through it. And when you lend that to your kids, when we lend that to our kids, you're right, they feel that.
Yeah.
They bring that in, and then they trust themselves. But if we have something else going on inside, they're also going to feel that.
Well, and I think you also have to keep in perspective what can my kid handle? Like you scaffold it at their level, I mean, so doesn't mean like all the kids that are taking off for college are all ready to handle all their stuff. They're just, some aren't. Many aren't. Like, or they're not able to handle one specific piece of it, that they just aren't ready. So then you do have to kind of like aid in some level. It doesn't mean it's just like, go figure it out, because now you're 18. So it just depends on what the situation is. But like, to Amy's point, like whatever, that your two boys so far, the issues it's registering for a class. So you forget the class, they may in the end have to like pay for the one credit that they forgot to get. And eventually when they graduate, they'll figure that out and they'll figure it out. It's okay. Like it's okay. So most of these mistakes, as long as it's okay. It's like when they're the scary ones.
Yeah, absolutely right.
That's where
you're absolutely, it's a good point to bring up. And yes. And that's where it does get scary, being a mom far away, being a parent far away.
Yeah. And you cross your fingers.
Right. And you're just like, here are all the places where you can get support. And that's, and leave your phone on.
Abby, you said something so wise, and what you were portraying was your kid. And I think that's something that we moms have to give ourselves. I want to go so far as say most moms, give yourself a gentle and strong at the same time reminder that your kid, and nobody knows your kid better than you. Yeah. So how much they can handle. Are you familiar with the author Gordon Neufeld? He's a wonderful writer he really focuses on the difference between peer orientation and family orientation, and how we're really living in a culture right now where our young people are being peer oriented way too soon, and society is not doing a good job by parenting our children, and it's our job to parent them. But he has this one line that I love that you made me think of, and that is, we may all grow up and grow older. Oh no, sorry, I messed it up. We may all grow older, but we don't always grow up. And so often, so many of us get stuck in adolescence because, for whatever reason, we weren't given the opportunities to make mistakes over and over. Or we weren't given a place to land and have a place to kind of come home and crumble. We weren't given that reflection and the receiving. You know, when a parent can receive a child or a young adult, it actually is what helps give them a strong sense of self. And so that's what helps us get to the next stage of whatever it is. But so often we get stuck.
Yeah. I will say something else you said too is, I think, Kate, you asked, like, what do we do when our kids are how do we do to like handle that feeling or the situation? And other podcasts I've heard you guys do, like talking about women and moms and their community that they have. And I will say, like, I definitely defer to my group of moms who are going through doing the same thing I am, and sort of kind of go through scenarios with them, or like, what would you do? Or, I mean, I'm constantly like getting feedback from other women, or my husband or his friends, like, cause he then talks to his friends about maybe what our kids are going through. And so it's definitely like still a community situation. It's not like I just know what to do and the kids are hurting. It's kind of like getting feedback from other people.
Collective wisdom.
Absolutely. Yes.
I'm reminded in this part of this conversation about how, you know, if we were to ask any mother anywhere, any place in the world, what do you want for your kids? Do you want them to be brave? Yes.
Yes.
Do you want them to be resilient? Yes. You know, those kinds of questions. And of course, we all know this, but we don't learn how to be brave without fear. We don't learn how to be resilient without falling down. And so there is that really important process of not just allowing for these falls and hurts. And, you know, I'm saying this now, and, you know, whether it's tomorrow or 4 years from now, you guys can be like, Kate, let me tell you what you said on that podcast. But we look forward to them. We want them to come so that our kids can learn how to stand back up. And I think there are many people out there, and probably many of our listeners as well, who may have been sort of sheltered from those things growing up. And then when something does happen and they get wobbly, they don't know how to get back up, or it's a real challenge to get back up because they don't have practice in that.
So they can grow through their adolescence. You want them to get through it, whatever age that happens to be, but you want them to get through it.
So on the one hand, of course, we don't need to find pleasure in our kids suffering or struggling, but we can look forward to those moments, because if we have the trust and confidence that you both are talking about, we can both know that they're going to be okay, even if they have scabs when they come back up, but that those moments of falling down are what are contributing to them being brave and resilient and competent adults.
Yes. Yes.
I have one more question. I hope this is an appropriate one to ask, but I know that I'll put myself out there first. When my husband and I have time for the two of us and our kids are away, sometimes I go through a period of like, oh, fuck, right? Like, I'm excited to spend time where it's just the two of us, but I'm also like, wow, we've been so preoccupied with parenting and co-parenting that what if we don't have anything to talk about? Or what if we don't know how to play, or whatever that thing is? And that's a mini version. That's like going away on a little vacation. And I wonder if the two of you, or one of the two of you, might be interested or willing to speak to that. Is like, what was that like for you, right? You've been co-parenting. We have people who are listening who are single parents, but certainly those who have partners have been co-parenting. And then there's this idea that your kids move out, and now it's just you and your person again. And I wonder if you guys would speak to that.
Do you want to start with that one, Amy?
Let's see. So Greg and I, we had just an amazing time before we had children. It was probably 4 or 5 years, and of just us in the city. Great, fantastic. And then we had kids, and we co-parenting, amazing, fun, awesome. And then teenage years, tighten the seatbelt. There was definitely some turbulence. It was, there were some moments, and we were just like, okay, you got that over there. I've got this over here. We were just managing. And then the kids started to slowly like grow up and start to leave. And it was a slow process. It was like, we all would always have dinner at night. And then, there would come times where it would just be like they'd be at the table maybe 3 times a week, and then it was not at the table at all. And then I'd still be making dinner, and we would sit down. It would just be me and Greg. And we're like, do you want to watch the news, or should we just put on some music? What do you want? And it was like we'd go out to dinner all the time, and it's fine. But there was just something about like it's coming. This time is coming, and it's just going to be us. But that we quickly moved through that. But I have to admit, there were a couple of moments of awkwardness, like, wow, this is different. And now it's, Greg keeps saying, he tells everybody, we're dating again. We're dating again. We get, we're trying to date again.
I love that so much.
Yep. I will say, I'd like to give a little shout out to my mom on this one, because my mom always, all through like early, when the kids were little, she would sort of, one thing she always was like, make sure, go on dates with your husband, like spend time alone with him, like it's insurance on your future, like check in with each other. Like she would bring it up every once in a while. She'd come out to visit and just be like, you guys going on dates? Like you should do at least once a week. Like she would sort of just bring that up. And then as like the empty nest, when it was getting closer and closer to both girls being out of the house, she was kind of like checking in again. Like, what are your plans for, like, you're going to have a lot more time alone. Like, do you have, like, what are you thinking about that? Like, she'd sort of bring it up so that it was like on my consciousness. Like I was thinking about it. So then Ted and I would talk about it. Like we would talk about what's coming and what's it going to be like. And I agree with Amy. Like we also we're really excited. In our, this is such everyone's story is so unique. Like I happen to be very excited to be spending time alone with him. Like I just like to hang out with him. He's like my first choice of a person. But we definitely talked about it a lot. Like we're wondering like what we were going to do and like what are the nights going to be like. And it was just part of our conversation to prepare for this time. And we're really excited to like get to know each other again on this day-to-day level. Yeah.
I just hear so much wisdom in both of your comments.
Heck yeah.
And the words that stood out for me were preparation. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of this reminder. It's like, when you first get pregnant or you first know you're going to get to adopt your baby, there's anticipation of how am I going to like feed the baby? But you have a chunk of time to prepare for that. That's why there's pregnancy. That's why there's waiting periods. It's like, it's not all of a sudden, boom, they're gone. Mm-hmm. And what I love that you said, Aim, is, all of the last year was slowly separating and preparing for separation. The other big thing I heard you say is future dreaming. Mm-hmm. And as a longtime couples therapist, it's actually one of the secret weapons for couples that thrive is to really dream about your future selves together. Mm-hmm. Because as much as we focus on being in the present moment, if we can't visualize or, fantasize about what's to come, then we can often get a little stuck and it can feel a little tunnel visioned. So cheers to that. Yeah. I wonder if we can rename empty nest.
Yeah. Yes.
I think it has to start with the word
story.
full, because there's something about there's fullness. Empty was sad. Expansion.
This is, I think, also I don't think we need to in this particular episode dive into that other question. I asked about figuring out who you are outside of mothering, and I think this is where we can circle back to that question, because when I hear empty, to your point, Ab, it's like I'm there's sort of a lost feeling in that. When I hear full, to your point, it's like, oh, I'm coming alive, to your term expansion, Amy. So, okay, what's it going to be? We're putting ourselves on the spot.
I know.
Lifetime.
Let's play with words. So nest is an interesting word. Yeah, the home.
And I think it came from like the kids spreading their wings and flying the nest.
Right.
Which is a good metaphor.
Yeah.
And actually in the birds, they push them out.
Right. They're
ready. They're like,
bye-bye.
Figure it out, birdie, right? Bye-bye.
But you can also think about it in not just the little bird is flying away, but like, because then it's just the only focus is just on the kids. There's this like
I will
adult
I
like
will
spreading
say,
their wings.
I will say something though. I have never, just to be clear, seen adult birds hanging out in that nest after the kids are gone.
They're also gone. Yeah, the
they're
nest
like,
might be
I'm
empty.
freaking out of here. I'm gonna go.
A worm. Who?
What if it's like wing expansion?
Wing expansion.
Taking flight.
Taking flight.
And everyone's taking flight.
We're gonna take flight.
The children, the young adults are taking flight.
So we're not empty nesting. We're taking flight.
There it is.
Wow.
Yes.
Where are you flying to, Amy?
Where am I flying to? I'm not sure right now. You know what? And that is another thing I wanted to say. I don't know. And I'm getting more comfortable with just taking this space to not know. It's
Hallelujah.
been 2 decades of doing one thing. Yeah. And a little preparation over the past year of coming into this next phase and understanding that it's okay. I don't have to do anything. I can just take.
You sound free.
There's a relief in not knowing, for sure.
Embracing that in our big life, many, 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 many years, there's really only 18 of them that is spent with the kid in your house. I mean, they're always like top of your list.
There's some crazy statistic, Abby, that says that 90% of the time we spend with our children is before age 18.
Yeah.
That's
so, I mean,
intense.
That's crazy statistic to think about. So I think it's important to think about that as they're in your house and you're raising them. And the reality is a lot of the time is not spent with them right in your immediate orbit. And so to embrace that, I think for me, that's so exciting that there's so much more to us, so many more years ahead of so many things to come that are our own. I'm just so excited by that.
You guys are I was going to say models, heroes. That's what you are, my heroes, because that, well, but to be, of course you're just starting. And to both you, Abby and Amy, I think one of the things, and Deb and I have talked about this behind the scenes, but one of the things that I think we both admire so much about both of you is your honesty and your integrity and your willingness to be vulnerable. Because when I hear you say that, Abby, it's like, yeah, let's be as present as we can and really enjoy as much as we can these 18 years. And a lot of moments are shitty moments during that time, right? It doesn't mean we have to be like, enjoy every minute. And you two are offering the perspective to us of like, it doesn't last forever to have them here, right?
It's a blink. I just have to say thank you. You, like Kate said, we just adore you so much. We're so grateful to have mama mentors in our lives. And I will say to all our listeners, get yourself a mama mentor because we need it. And you'll mentor someone else because that is what we do when we show up together as a big collective mama.
For those listeners who don't have mama mentors out there, I'm wondering if you each would like to leave one thought for our listeners. One, maybe it's something you've already said that feels important. Maybe it's something new. One piece of wisdom to offer those folks who maybe have little ones and it's still another 15 years till they're, what did we say? Flying away? What was the word? Wing expansion. another 15 years till their wing expansion. I'm gonna have to work on that. Or maybe some of our listeners.
Maybe some commenters.
There might be some folks.
Send in some
Yeah, exactly.
phrase.
Well, we
There's
can
gotta
do
be
that.
Some good stuff out there.
There might be some folks whose kids are gone right now. This is their first fall. So what do you want to offer?
Well, I would say I would advise to not be impulsive. Don't make any big decisions like getting a puppy like we did. Or even like selling your house real fast like we want to. Or, just try to sit still.
So good. So good.
Oh my gosh. I would say just all along the way, touch in with yourself. Like keep checking in. Like, how am I doing? How am I feeling? What do I need? Like just constantly do that. Because things can go off the rails. They definitely did for me. And I'd realize, oh my gosh, wait a minute. Where are my girls? Where are my friends? I've got to go find them. When the kids were little, I realized I did not have a crew. I had to go find it. And I know I need it. It's not just going to show up on my doorstep. I got to go get it. So check in with yourself and check in with your partner. If you have someone who you love in your life, check, are we good? How are we doing? What do we need? What do we need to change? What do we need to shift? I feel like that's just a constant and but really with yourself, because the future it's a big, long future ahead.
That's such good wisdom. And Deb, we're not far away from taking flight.
We are not.
Right?
We're very close,
we have, sophomore, freshman, 8th and 7th grade. It's not that far away. So we will be coming to you when our time comes.
We got this.
Can I say one thing? I want to say the two of you have really been something together. Your chemistry is amazing. I had so much fun listening to season 1. So much fun. And I just wish that it happened a few years earlier so that I could really gain from the wisdom that you are sharing. So you're just both doing a really wonderful thing. So I love you both so much. And thanks. This has been such a treat to be part of the conversation. So
thank you.
Cheers. I want to say cheers to that. I mean, how many times have I relied on you guys for your feedback and help on what was going on in my own life? So with my kids, etc. So anyway, cheers to that.
Yay.
Yeah.
Takes a village.
We love you.
Deb.
Love you, Kate.
Love you.
Have a good night.
You too. See you next week.
Bye.